I was quite taken aback, I think. I mean, obviously, in the sort of running up to the diagnosis, I had various tests, and some of those clearly I wasn't doing very well on, but we had, towards the end of that process, there was various sort of scannings done, and those made it quite clear there was clear damage in that, and that was quite concerning. But the most concerning, I think, thing was when the doctor got myself and my wife together and basically gave the results of all this, because clearly it was heading this sort of way, was saying that, you've got dementia, this is what dementia is, and turned to my wife and said, you're now his carer. And it shocked Christine, my wife, that she'd sort of told that so bluntly. It also concerned me really, which is that, she didn't know anything about it. This is sort of, it's an extra sort of task to do. You sort of marry one person and suddenly something else might be happening. So that was the thing that I found most distressing, I think. And my wife and I both found that we had to work past that to work out, well, what does dementia really mean for me and for her in our relationship? I think initially worrying about what that would mean for the future. What do I tell my children about, what this is going to mean for me and their relationships. So that's one of the effects. I think the other thing was that it allowed us to sort of talk about it together. So there was this funny things going on. We don't know quite what it is, and now we've got some facts in front of us, and we can say, well, how does it affect things? Can I still do this work I'm doing at the animal centre, volunteering there? What does Christine need to do? In fact, what I found happened really was being very practical. She worked out all the things she needed to think about, like, for example, having a special calendar that shows all of our events. So whenever I got booked anything, she said, tell me so I could put it on the calendar and then remind you about it. And essentially setting up a sort of supportive arrangement, which wasn't, I'm in charge sort of thing, and wasn't sort of weak, as it were. So that was very helpful, a sort of development of our relationship. And now one of the things that did concern Christine, well, behind Christine, first was she would be telling me something, reminding me of something, and I'd get quite cross, sort of, I know that, I didn't forget that sort of thing. And I had to pull back and say, well, actually, I won't sort of jump on you when you say those strange things. So that, I think, built the relationship. I think our relationship is probably a bit stronger now, not because I need support and it gives her more power, as it were, but because we now both a sort of a unit, really. And she's been tremendously helpful to me in my coping with the results of the diagnosis. And in fact, I don't. My friends know what's happened to me as well, so it's not sort of a little secret that we keep. It is something. My state has changed a bit, but it's not damaged the person I am. I'm still the person I was before. It's just some things I can't do as well. I have to, for example, when I'm working at the animal centre, I need to make sure that I tell them about my issues so that, for example, when I get the name wrong or don't know who the hell they are, that they're not upset about it. And also so they know what the risks might be for me looking after the animals. And that, again, has worked out very well. They've been very supportive of me. They've gone out of their way to adapt what they do to me. And I think, again, if you're open about what you're experiencing, people I find are often quite happy to help. And most things, really. I mean, I retired some time ago, so I don't actually have work to do. But I do all the things I used to do. For example, I go to the gym 3 times a week. I do classes there as well as doing a circuit and so on. And I meet people there, and there's sort of a couple of guys I know there from that. So it's extended my socialisation a bit. So I think actually it's that all the things I would have done anyway have carried on the same. And in a sense, I can say, well, I might not be able to do this, that, and the other, but I can sort of do this sort of exercise, and I'm fitter than I was. I can walk this many steps and stuff. I've got a Fitbit thing that tells me how good I am, sort of thing. So those sort of things help me feel good about myself, and also I don't feel that I'm failing, which I think a lot of people do feel. They've lost their sort of ability. I do feel that I'm much the same person that I was, really. It is, and one of the things, practical thing is actually she'll remind me of things. Sort of, she'll know that I should be doing this on this day, and to say you are going to, you are going to your gym session. Oh yes, of course, that sort of thing, without being, sort of making it too obvious, really. So I think it's being cared for, and I think we talk about carers supporting people with dementia, and it's caring in the biggest sense. I think really it's sort of taking account of what we need to know and what we're not understanding and stuff. And I think that's been a big a factor in my ability to manage this really. And I'm glad that she's there. I think to not be too hard on yourself, really. It's too easy to sort of close yourself down and say, I'm not what I was, I haven't got the same sort of relationship and whatever. Is that to think that actually you are still the same person. You've got the memories you had. I mean, even though my short term memory is dreadful, my long term memory is just as it was. I can remember my friends and all this sort of stuff. So it's only some things have changed, not everything has changed. And I think people who don't know about dementia are probably most frightened of that. I'm going to basically be crazy, I'm going to be completely unable to interact with people. So I think people do often feel that about dementia, and I found that's not the case. As I say, people have found been very helpful and supportive without, without being a nuisance to them, if you see what I mean. I think one of the biggest things, and this is the obvious thing people think about with dementia, is forgetting stuff. So I have notes everywhere. I mean, I mentioned Christine's calendar, which shows what I'm doing. In my phone, I keep a post-it note, which is the current things to do today. So I look at that. Well, usually look at that, and sort of try to make sure I do those things. So that's an obvious thing. It's reminders to do things, and also I think it's doing the things you always did, not, for example, to hide and say, oh, well, I'm not really sure I want to be telling people I work with that I've got dementia. Is be open about it. I've found when I'm open about my dementia status, people have been helpful and not over sort of worried about it. It's oh well, we'll have to do something special with him because he's not like us anymore. I found that it was the relationship I'd always had with them. So I think people shouldn't be afraid that they've lost something. They're just slightly different in their ability to work with the world now, I suppose. The point basically is that someone's been there can tell you what it's like. If you're looking down in a hole and you don't know quite how deep it is, they can say, well, actually, it's not as deep as you thought it was. So I think I felt that they were happier that they'd heard from someone who wasn't a professional, but someone who was actually a fellow sufferer, if you like. And I think that's important. I think particularly talking generally about medicine, you're often you're just the object that the NHS works on, aren't you, really? Sort of a bit of a nuisance, really, getting in the way of the bed and this sort of stuff. And actually, it's not like that, really. It's that, we just need some support and advice and stuff. And I think what you've been doing has been personally very helpful to me. This sort of action, I think, is very good. I think that being accepting what you are really and accepting what you can and can't do. And I don't talk about dementia now. It's just the things that some of the things you just can't do anymore. You can't go clubbing until 3 o'clock in the morning anymore. And some things, some relationships change as well. And I find that, I don't feel quite as old as I expect to be because I'm working a lot with younger people. And I found that is quite helpful, just as it were, not being closed off, I suppose. Yeah, I speak, you wouldn't believe it, I'm basically a shy person. So I don't generally sort of reach out to people. So I found that over the time, perhaps more so since I was diagnosed, that I reach out more with people. I must admit, when I talk to people, I always say I've got Alzheimer's, even though it's not necessarily the Alzheimer's diagnosis, because dementia sounds like something from the 19th century, doesn't it? It's the person locked up, the mad niece or whatever. And so I think it's perhaps unfortunate it's called that. I think the issue really is that you just have less capacity to do certain things. So you won't be exactly the same as you were, but you're still mostly the same. What's gone is some peripheral elements of that. And I think the thing is not to be too frightened by it.